We're making vegetable lasagna today. There's no meat in this recipe. Let's get started. It's pretty easy to do. Set a large pot of water on the stove. Put a little salt in it, maybe half a teaspoon, with enough water to cover the lasagna noodles, and put the heat on high. There are a lot of different vegetables you can choose to put together a vegetable lasagna, and this time I'm going to do mushrooms, garlic of course, onions, a yellow squash, and a red pepper. Next time I think I'm going to put in some spinach, but I didn't think about that before I went to the store. So I'm going to chop all this up and we'll see what's next. Start with a large pot on the stove and put in a tablespoon or two of olive oil or even coconut oil, and then put your chopped onion in there. And get that going. Just remember to stir this often. And did I already say it's medium heat? And next, we'll get the red pepper going and the mushrooms in particular. And we'll put in the garlic after that and the yellow squash after that. Since mushrooms cook down to be smaller, but I don't want them to be this big. I bought them sliced. I just want to cut them into smaller pieces, but they don't have to be tiny sizes because they're going to shrink during the cooking process. Alright, so just cut them up like this, and now I'm ready to put these into the pot too. So now I'm adding the mushrooms. You want to stir this every time so that the vegetables get coated in the oil. And if you want, you can put a cover on the pan to speed the cooking process. I added the garlic while you weren't looking. Sorry about that. But I do show in my meat lasagna video on this channel how to mince garlic. So I did all 3 garlic cloves. I added them. I put the lid on. And you can see that the mushrooms reduce. But it's real watery right now, which is fine. And the onions are translucent. So we're doing well. I'm turning the heat up to medium now to get rid of some of this water. And then I'm going to add the chopped red pepper and the chopped yellow squash. I've chopped the red pepper into small pieces and the yellow squash fairly small too. Now some people put zucchini into this recipe. I'm not a big zucchini fan when it's cooked because it gets too mushy. So it's just me. I like it raw. So next we're going to add these two to the pot. And adding the yellow squash and the red pepper now. Give it a stir. And I'm going to cook this for about 5 minutes, and then I'll check it. And if I think it still needs to be cooked a little bit longer, I'll do it for another 5. Meanwhile, I'm going to have 1 large can of whole tomatoes, and I did buy the, this is the 28-ounce can, I did buy salt-free, and then you need 15 ounces of tomato sauce. My store only had the 2 little cans, and then 1 6-ounce can of tomato paste, so you can open those and get those ready to put into the pot. Actually, before you go on, with these whole tomatoes, you need to break them up. So wash your hands first, or in my last video on the meat lasagna, I used kitchen shears, but you can just pull them apart. They don't have to be small, or you can use a knife and fork. Whatever you want to do to break them apart into smaller pieces. And we're going to use the juice, so don't drain these because you're going to use the whole thing. Just break apart every single one. Let's see. Okay. And I think we're ready to go. And we're ready to put this into the pot. So, put your whole tomatoes that you've broken up into the pot. And the tomato sauce. And a 6-ounce can of tomato paste, and just like in the other video, it's very sticky and it takes a while to get it all out. So if you want to fast forward so that you don't have to watch this whole thing, that is fine. Alright, I can just imagine what I'm doing here. Almost have it all out. Okay, now we're ready for spices. And in this little dish, I have 1 tablespoon of dried basil, a whole tablespoon, 1 teaspoon of salt, and a half a teaspoon of ground black pepper. And then you stir all this up. And I'm going to turn the heat up just a bit to about medium to medium high. I want to bring this to a simmer. And once it simmers, I'll turn the heat down a bit and put a lid on it to cook this for a while. The sauce is bubbling now, so I'm going to turn the heat down just a little bit. I'm going to give it a stir. And I'm going to come back and stir it once in a while. But for right now, I'm going to put the lid on it. And the water for the noodles is still not boiling. Normally, I would make this lasagna in a large 9x13 pan, but I'm going to make 2 smaller ones. So I have a small tin pan that's a square, like 9x9, and I'm going to freeze this one. And then I'm going to make the other one in a casserole dish. I don't have a square or rectangular casserole dish. I just have these oval ones. And I'm just guessing that this would be a good size. So that's what I'm going to do, and we'll see how it turns out. Oh, and if you do buy these, like I said in the meat lasagna video, make sure that you wash it out with hot water and soap. Give it a good rinse, because they've been sitting in a factory. Before I leave these pans, set these pans aside, I just put a little bit of olive oil in the bottom of each, and take a paper towel and coat the bottom. You can do this, or you can spray oil on, or you can put a little bit of sauce as your first layer, but this works. Guess what? The water's finally boiling. And I'm going to boil 6 at a time, 6 noodles. 3, 4, 5, 6. So for a total of 12. However, 10 probably would have been enough, but then I would have had 2 some in my bag. So anyway, I'm going to make sure the water comes back to a boil, which it already is. And then I'm going to set the timer for 10 minutes. Alright, guess what? The water is still boiling. I'm going to keep it boiling because I'm going to do a second shift. And in my meat lasagna video, I showed myself taking these out and putting them in a dish, but I only showed the dish. So I'm going to show taking them out. I'm using a fork and a silicone pad, and one at a time. They're very slippery, and if you think you're going to do 2 at a time, you're fooling yourself, unless you're really good at this. But most of the people who watch my cooking videos are watching them because they're new to cooking, or they haven't made this dish before. So, yeah. I guess in the other video I used, oh look, I got 2. Oh, I just lied. Okay. So now I got 4 out, and oh, they're slippery and the water's hot. They're ignoring me. Okay, here I got one. Whoa, no, oh no, there it goes down. And when they go back in, they splash. So be careful. And remember, a wet hot pot holder is not good. That's why I've got the silicone, because the silicone ones can get wet. If you use a regular pot holder and they get wet, heat will go right through them. So don't make that rookie mistake. Okay, so that's all of them, and now I'm going to put the last 6 in here, bring the water to boil, set the timer for 10 minutes. I've still got the sauce on the stove. It's still bubbling because it's thickening. While that last set of noodles is boiling, I'm going to get the ricotta cheese ready. So I'm starting with 2 eggs and just mix them up with a fork. Scramble them up a bit. And then I have ricotta cheese, and in these smaller containers they only had the part skim, they didn't have the whole milk. But these are both, let's see, 2 of them are 15 ounces, the large one was 32. So it's kind of a decision about which one to buy. I'm going to get all of that out, you can see that. Got 2 containers of this, and here's the second one. Okay, and mix that up. Can't remember if last time if I used a bigger bowl, maybe I did. Okay, and then I have spices, and I've already measured those out, and what I'm doing is dried parsley flakes. I have 2 tablespoons of dried parsley flakes, 1 teaspoon of salt, and 1/2 teaspoon of ground pepper. So I'll mix that up. If you're going to be baking this right away, preheat your oven to 350 degrees and put the rack in the middle. If you're going to be refrigerating it, then of course you don't have to preheat the oven. Then the last thing I'm going to put in, I bought some Parmesan and Romano cheese. Actually, I have a little bit left from the last lasagna I made. You want 1/2 cup. I think that's all I have in here. It's shredded, and so I don't have any for the top. But typically you'd want 1/2 cup for this mixture and another 1/4 cup to put on top, but that's okay. Or you can just use Parmesan or just use Romano, but since my store had that combination already made and shredded, that's what I bought. Okay, so now this is ready for when we're ready to assemble everything. So the next thing you could do that I didn't do when I did the last thing is to get the mozzarella ready. So for this we're going to do 1 pound of mozzarella. I actually have 2 packages that are 8 ounces each. I like to buy it sliced. Okay, so you want 16 ounces or 1 pound total of the mozzarella. So I'm going to slice these open and get them ready to assemble. Meanwhile, the sauce actually cooked up nice and thick. I've just had the stove turned on, the burner turned on for the sauce the whole time. It's actually been cooking for a good 45 minutes to an hour. And that's okay, because it just thickens up, and that's what you want, a nice thick sauce. Alright, so I'm doing 2 pans, and the first layer is going to be noodles. Now I brought my kitchen shears because it's likely that the noodles are going to be too long, right? So I'm going to cut them with the kitchen shears and figure out what I'm going to do here. All right. Oh, and they're hot. And you can overlap. All right. I'm probably going to do maybe 5 down here. They are hot. 3, and then maybe do a couple of these. 4, a couple of these short ones, and then end with a long one. All right, and then I'll do the other casserole dish, which should be interesting because it's almost long enough, but I'm going to have to trim here too, which is fine. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, you can. So it doesn't matter where these go. Oops, that one just got sliced. Interesting. Let's see. 3. If they get doubled up, that's okay. 3 was okay. Because I have so many noodles, I might do more on the bottom just because I can. And I might double up in a piece over here because one is broken. Okay. Then the next layer is going to be half of the ricotta mixture. So if I look at, in my bowl here, and I figure 1/4 of it in each container, this is where you might want to fast forward. Because I am going to spread this, and it takes a couple minutes. Oh, there goes the oven. I'm just using a wooden spoon here. Trying to figure out how much is half, which is a guessing game. Just have to eyeball it. After this, we'll be layering on the slices of mozzarella cheese. If you buy shredded, that's okay, but I think the slices are easier. All right, now we're ready for our mozzarella. And when I buy it like this, the pieces are separated by paper. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 10 in each, so that's interesting. So I think I'm going to do 4 in the square pan and 6 in the long pan. Well, maybe. And lots of overlapping in the long pan. And after I get the last of this down, I'm going to put on the sauce. And I'm going to use a ladle for that. Let's see. I need some space. And I'm going to ladle on. And you can't see this. Half of the sauce. So again, eyeballing it. And excuse me, spreading it out and covering all of the cheese and any little noodles, because you don't want the noodles exposed. You have one more layer of noodles, because the noodles, if they're exposed in the oven, they're going to get really dried out. So you want all those noodles covered in sauce. So I don't want to use more than half of the sauce right now. So I want more of it on top. Okay. So obviously my kitchen is not very big. So now we're going to do the noodles again. And it looks like I have more noodles than I need. Right? Alright. So here I'm going to do this one. Let's see, here's some other little extra things that fell off. That's alright. And some other little small pieces, which are fine. This is all going to get baked in. Let's see how many we have. I'm going to do a couple of these over here. Let's see what I have. I'm going to, before I cheat my casserole dish, I'm going to do all those. Okay. And one more for the casserole dish over here. And then I'm going to use these here. Actually, I'm going to put this one this way. Alright. And that's my noodles. And now, the last bit of the ricotta. And again, if you want to fast forward here, that's fine. All right. If you're baking with these foil type pans, I would suggest that when you do that, that you set the foil pan on a large cookie sheet in the oven, just to give it something stable to sit on. Alright, I'm thinking that my two pans here are slightly larger than one 9 by 13. But that's just a guess. But you don't need a lot of the ricotta cheese anyway, because you don't want a whole big mouthful of ricotta unless you're a huge ricotta fan. Okay, I'm almost done. I'm scraping the bottom of the bowl here. And I'm just putting that together. And if you want, you can get a spatula out to get every last bit. Okay, now the last of the mozzarella cheese. These out. Okay, I think I'm going to do the same thing as I did before. 4 in the square pan. So if you were doing this in a 9 by 13, one 9 by 13 pan, you could overlap these mozzarella slices like I'm doing. Can you see that? I'm doing over here in the ceramic container. This is better in a rectangular or square, I just decided. And I'm almost done with this. And then we'll do the last of the sauce. Alright, I'm going to tuck. I've got a little bit, I don't know if you can see this, I've got a little bit of noodle showing here. I'm going to tuck that down because I don't want noodles sticking in the air in the oven. Alright, now the last of the sauce. And I'm also going to get a spoon. Because I'm not going to be able to get much out with the ladle when I'm at the bottom. The ladle is done, and I'm going to get out as much as I can with the spoon. And I'm sorry, I'm probably blocking. You can imagine what this looks like. And I'm going to spread this, covering every little piece of noodle that's showing. So this is the one that I'm going to freeze, and this other one here is the one that I'm going to bake now. So what I'm going to do, oh, and by the way, this is, if I had some extra Parmesan or Romano cheese, I'd sprinkle a little bit on at this point, but I don't have any. Okay, so now I'm going to bake this one on the right. And I'm going to put a lid on it for the first 15 minutes. And then after 15 minutes, I'm going to take the lid off and bake it without the lid for a second 15 minutes, for a total of 30 minutes. And just to make sure there isn't any burning or anything like that. So I'll show you that next. I'm putting this in the oven in the middle rack and putting the lid on. Now, if you don't have a lid like this, then just cover it with foil, and we're going to set the timer for 15 minutes. Then we're going to take the lid off and set the timer for another 15 minutes. Now back to this one. In order to freeze it, I'm going to put on 2 layers of plastic wrap. And then, where am I? And then, seriously? Put plastic wrap right into the thing. And then 1 layer of foil. So, lots of plastic wrap. like a restaurant quality plastic wrap because it sticks better. Okay, it's really tight, and then cover it with foil. Now when you bake this later, it's going to be a little trickier, especially if you put the frozen one right in there. If you preheat the oven to 300, take the wraps off. And if you put it into the oven frozen, then you're probably going to want to bake it for an hour at 350 and cover it with foil. Take the plastic off, like I said, cover it with foil for the first 30 minutes and then take the foil off. But every now and then, every 10 minutes or so, take a sharp knife and stick it into the middle and then pull it out and touch the knife to see if the knife is hot. If the knife is still cold, then it's not baked through yet. And I'm going to do 2 layers of foil just because that's what I like to do. Alright, so this one goes in the freezer. You can also maybe Google other ideas for baking a frozen lasagna, and I'll probably do that and put it into the call out, which you'll see in a corner of your screen. We're at the halfway point. I'm removing the lid and resetting the timer for another 15 minutes. 30 minutes are up in total. I've taken the lasagna out of the oven. Now we have to let it sit for 10 minutes at least, maybe even 15 minutes, to just set so that it can be sliced properly. So here I go. I'm setting the timer again for 10 minutes. Before I slice this, I did look up a little more information about the frozen lasagna. And the consensus is when you're going to bake it the day before, put it in the refrigerator to defrost. So the idea of putting a frozen lasagna right into the oven is debatable, and it's not a good idea because it's too hard to tell when it's going to be done. The center might end up cold no matter what. So if you're going to eat it on a Friday night for dinner, take it out of the freezer on Thursday, put it into the refrigerator, let it defrost for a full day, then set your, preheat your oven to 350 and put the refrigerated, now defrosted lasagna into the oven. Remember to take off the plastic wrap, put it in the oven and bake it for 45 minutes instead of 30. And if you want, you can put foil on for the first half and then remove it for the second half of the baking. Now the other thing is, don't let it defrost on your kitchen counter. You can look up on the internet why that's a bad idea. Put it in the refrigerator, let it defrost. Okay, so that's the consensus. So here I'm going to use a spatula to get out some lasagna here, and I'm using a sharp knife. The first piece is always the hardest, the messiest. So let's see how we do. Alright, and I'm going to put it right on here. It's still pretty gooey. Alright, the longer it sits, the less gooey it will be. Can you see that okay? So that is how you make vegetable lasagna. Like I said, the first piece, when it's still really hot, it's going to be the gooeyest. And serve this with a nice salad and some crusty bread.